MIT has the Dragon Eagle TV and Alliance for Impact to support our webinar. And welcome, everyone. So I think we can get started. Right, so.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay, then I'm gonna first introduce you. So we chit chat for a bit, but let people know a little bit about you. So Mikhail, so he has a lot of experience in the professional coaching and training, and a long time ago, so he started his career in Morgan Stanley, right? So you started building this internal learning system, and so that the colleagues they can work on their career development, and then he consulted, right, designed curriculum, and also coached their colleagues, from all different levels, from associate to all the way up to managing directors. So right now, he's holding a similar position at Columbia University, and that's where we met. Mikhail is also, he's a meditation expert, and he practices multidisciplinary artist. And so in his, coaching and his, course facilitation, he also blends those talents. So for example, he helps the leaders in their strategic thinking, right, through abstract exercises, right, that increase their divergent thinking. And he trains others how to stay in the moment, respond instead of react, and diminish the power of the ego, all in the order to lower stress, increase productivity and engagement, and creates this psychological safety. So I think, today really is going to, give us an kind of, in a nutshell, right, what this, what is the adult learning, right, and how we can use the, learning to continue our career development, which apparently is very different than how we were learning in our childhood. So this is a brand new topic for me, and so I'm very excited to learn from Mikhail.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you so much for the introduction, June. It's great to be here with you, and also to be with all of you who are on this call right now. It's a privilege to be here with you, and I'm excited to share some of my expertise around learning. So I came to Columbia University, and it's a similar role that I had at Morgan Stanley, and the executive team, they wanted me to build a learning culture. And it's an institute of higher education, and you think, wow, shouldn't that already be the case? But it actually wasn't. It felt like it was very much like a corporation. And so I'm responsible for a very large part of the population, staff and faculty, and I'm responsible for their professional and career development. And how we have shifted the culture and helped people figure out how to use their learning to improve the functions of the organization. So I just want to read you really quickly what a learning culture is, because many of you might not know it, but the Center for Nonprofit Excellence in the United States defines a learning culture as a learning culture exists within and when an organization uses reflection, feedback, and sharing of knowledge as part of its day-to-day operations. It involves continual learning from members' experiences and applying that learning to improve. Learning cultures take organizations beyond an emphasis on program-focused outcomes to a more systematic and organization-wide focus on sustainability and effectiveness. So I feel like while we're not 100% there at Columbia, I've only been there for 4 years, I think we've made huge leaps and bounds. And so today, what I'd like to do is share some of the focus that we've had there. And I'm going to share my screen really quickly. We do have a raised hand, June. Do we want to respond to that, or what do you suggest?
I cannot see. Oh, Delhi, right? So you raise your hand. Let me see. Oh, we can continue. So that raise hand is gone.
Got it. So here's my amazing title page for my presentation today. I hope you all enjoy this. And so I just want to start off by this thought experiment. So in this little thought experiment, we have this square represents a pool, and the circles represents a tree on every corner of the pool. Now the owner wants to expand this pool. He wants to double the size of the pool, okay? But you cannot move any of the trees. Now, I know some of you probably have seen this exercise before, but I just wanted to get us warmed up a little bit. So just take a moment and think about how could you double the size of this pool without moving the trees? And I'm sure we have lots of smart people that have already figured it out on the call. And June, can people type into the chat if they want?
Yes, you can. Yeah.
All right, so if anyone has the answer, if they could put it in the chat, I think that would be great. And then and if not, then I can give you the solution, but I'm sure we have an answer in the audience. Yep, from the audience. Add triangle shape on each side, exactly. So for those of you who didn't get that, so the solution is here. We didn't move the trees at all, and we've expanded the pool. And a lot of people might have been stumped a little bit. But I think sometimes this is a lot how we look at our career. We have to build, it's kind of like adding an addition on a house. The main structure is still there, but we have to figure out a way to build around it. And I think this is a very good metaphor for as we're thinking about our career. So this is the question we want to answer tonight this evening for you all is, how can we use the idea of learning to help us and others progress in their careers? So what we're going to tackle today is we're going to learn how to develop and encourage others to develop a lifelong learning mindset, understand how adults learn differently from children. We're going to rejuvenate your ideas around mentorships and networks, and then learn how to embrace accountability through learning contracts. So one of the big parts about your career development is coming up with a plan. And we're going to touch on it towards the beginning of this talk, but at the end is when you're really going to get the meat of how to really help someone develop their career with some accountability with this learning contract. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with Carol Dweck's book called Growth Mindset. And she essentially talks about the difference between people generally have either a growth mindset where they're open to learning, they're open to change, versus a fixed mindset where one is more rigid in their thinking. So just as a review, if for some of you who don't know, and I actually think that people exist on a spectrum, but what we want to do, and I'm going to show you the growth mindset side in a minute, but the fixed mindset, usually people are worried about how they look. They're worried about that they come across as smart, as opposed to actually being smart. They want to look good, right? The intelligence is static. It's not dynamic. They avoid challenges. They give up easily on obstacles. They see effort as fruitless. They ignore constructive feedback, and they can feel threatened by other people's success. And then on the other side, the growth mindset is people actually want to learn. They want to grow, and they have a desire to learn, and that they know that their intelligence can be developed. It's not static, that it's dynamic and they can grow. They embrace challenges. They persist in the face of setbacks. They see effort as the path to mastery, as opposed to a huge challenge that they don't even want to do. And they learn from criticism, which is so important. And learning how to give and receive feedback is so important, and how to apply the criticism or the constructive feedback that you receive. And finally, they find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. So they don't feel threatened. They're like, how that person over there is such a success. What can I learn from them? So in my mind, I think of learning, of having a lifelong learner's mindset is very similar to having a growth mindset. So as we go from DWEC to this lifelong learning mindset, how can we develop that? Not only in ourselves, but in others. I think we probably have a mixed bag of our audience members here. Some of you might be new to the organizations and working on a team. Some of you might be managing a team. I feel like all of us have managers, but I think that we can work on ourselves. We can look at this and try to move towards that growth mindset as we look at ourselves. But how can we help our colleagues? How can we help our team members? So here's some ways that we can do that. First of all, we have to lead by example. So if you want others around you to learn and continue learning until they die, essentially, you also need to be investing in learning and actively pursuing new knowledge and skills. Also, after you've taken classes, share that knowledge with other people. This is one of the best pieces of advice I can give anyone is after you've taken a class, especially when you're within an organization, talk to someone and tell them what you learned, because you actually emphasize what you just learned and then you're sharing with someone else. So also, the other thing that you can do to help develop lifelong learning mindset in your teams and in your organizations is creating psychologically safe environments. And this is a buzzword right now, but I feel like when we're trying to create inclusive environments and we want all voices to be heard, it's really important that leaders make sure that everyone says something. And I know some people can be very shy and introverted, and that's fine. They don't have to share, but to give people an opportunity to share, to voice their opinions is very, very important. Promoting curiosity. Yes?
There's so many nuggets for gold. So if you don't mind, can I chime in a little bit?
Yes, please. Absolutely.
This is great, that you talked so far. So the growth mindset versus fixed mindset, I think this is the first time I ever heard that, it's a spectrum, but it's so true, right? So, it's not that somebody only have fixed mindset or always have growth mindset, but it's, having this, mentality of, we're on a spectrum. Then when we encounter a situation, we can observe ourselves, right? Now, actually, I'm having the fixed mindset. Then what can I change to, go back to the growth mindset? So I think that's very, very helpful framework. And then another piece, when you say lead by example, when you learn something, try to teach, I definitely find that's hugely helpful, right? So when I try to just learn knowledge, sometimes I feel it's almost like infotainment, right? So it's interesting to learn, but how much we retain afterwards, right? That's very much questionable. But when we learn and we have we keep in the back of mind that we need to teach someone, right? The amount of retention is just, astronomically different.
It goes up.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like it happens so often that we take a good class, we're in the class and we're taking it and we're learning so much. We think we're learning so much. And then we leave the class and we go back on autopilot because humans have very deep grooves in their brains. And it's so easy for us to fall back into our regular life, regularly scheduled programming. So I think, I think they thank you for interrupting me and highlighting that.
This is great. I think, everybody on this call, right? So let's try to use what we just learned, right? From the learning expert, right? So let's all teach somebody, right, that we care about after this webinar. So that also, basically win-win, right? Help us to learn more and also help, somebody we care about to know more.
And you don't have to what I would do for people that ever take any class is you don't have to regurgitate everything, but three things from the class that really resonated with you. Write them down and try to incorporate those into your life. I think that's because I think that classes, they dump, it's a, what do you call it? Drinking from the water hose or the fire hydrant or whatever. And all this information is coming at you. You're not going to be able to implement all of these into your life. Pick 1 to 3 things that you can, and then you'll start making changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Oh, and you talk about this creating a psychologically safe environment. Could you tell me a little bit more? How do we create such an environment?
Yeah, I mean, this is I don't know if all of you have heard of the trust triangle. So essentially, when you are building trust with people, you think about a triangle that has three sides. If you're building trust, you are logical. You're making sense when you speak. You are authentic. You're being your true self, and also the person that you're speaking with, the people that you're communicating with, you have empathy for them. You really care about them. So it's empathy, authenticity, and logic. And when there's a breakdown in one of those, then you lose trust. So I think one way to build these psychologically safe environments is to try to always be authentic, to always be empathetic. And I think the way how you are empathetic with people on your team is to ask them about their life outside of the workplace. What did they do over the weekend? What are some of their hobbies? To really to think about it. And lastly is to be logical. And we're going to talk about later on in the presentation some ways you can be more logical in your work, because I find even if you make sense to yourself, sometimes you don't make sense to other people. So you have to make sure that there's two-way communication, that what you're saying, the other person's actually understanding. Yeah.
So what's the psychological, in psychology, what's the term, like, for example, if, there's a song that you really, you think everybody should know, right? And if you, tap it, very few people actually can understand, right? That speaks to what you say, right? Things very clear in our mind, but maybe, just completely not understandable by others. Well, how do we solve that problem?
I think that you ask for understanding. So for example, if you've had a one-on-one conversation with one of your colleagues or a team member or your manager, even, is to ask them to repeat what you just said, or could you to kind of see if you have common ground of the understanding of the conversation. So especially, I think it's harder if you're talking to your manager and you're asking, so manager, can you tell me what I just said? But the other way around, it's easier. So the manager, if you have to have your a one-on-one, is to say, so could you mind telling me what we discussed in your own words? And then you can get on the same page. I think that's one great way to do it, is to just make sure how you're communicating is clear and that the other person is taking in exactly what you wanted to say.
Right. I think sometimes we try to be speedy, right? So, it just like tell people, what's the goal we're going to reach, and, they just go ahead, do it. But sometimes, trying to expedite things, but because we didn't do enough, upfront, like alignment, right? Sufficient alignment, like you just
exactly
said, right? Things actually can take much longer and, much more painful, right? Without this, clear understanding. Very well said.
Yeah. And then in my coaching, when I coach, I sometimes coach people still in college on communication tactics, on not only in interviews, but also just once they're in the workplace, is making sure that they're communicating effectively, especially in their presentation skills. And so I think that's a great one of my niches when I'm coaching people, is communication and presentation. I think it's always really, really important. So just making sure that you have those skills under your belt, I think is crucial.
Yeah, that's actually very true, right? Especially, when the students, right, transition from being a college or high school, college, all those learning to actually work in a company, right? So the skills, communication skills needed actually is different, right? So this is great that you coach about that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I asked a lot of questions, so I guess I just let everyone in the audience know that if you have any questions, just type in the chat box, and I will monitor that. And of course, if you want to wait until the end to ask questions, feel free to do that too.
Absolutely, and I'll start pausing, and so I tend to like steamroll my presentation. So, but I'm glad to know that you're open to stopping and asking questions. I think it's really important. So this was really another really important one. I think managers often look for their team members to be really perfect. And I think mistakes, as long as you have checkpoints in between, so it doesn't like you don't have mistakes going out to clients. But I think internal mistakes, I think they're actually really healthy because we can learn a lot from mistakes that we make. So, and that also builds trust, is giving someone an assignment and allowing them to actually run with it and occasionally make a mistake. This is really important to me, is being self-reflective. We are so inundated with our phones, with our computers, with televisions, that we rarely just sit somewhere and reflect, or on a problem, on a challenge, on an opportunity. And I think this is something really important that we can do with our teams, is to just spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the room reflecting on a question that you want them to think about, to ruminate on, even if it's a project that just happened. This is a really important one, I think. Self-reflection, we rarely do it anymore, and I think that a lot can come from it.
Yeah. Well, on this self-reflection point, so like you said, right? So it's we can pick up our phone anytime, right? When we feel bored, then self-reflection, can be challenging, right? To actually set a time to do that. And especially if at work, it's not something that the leaders ask, right? Ask people to do. So do you have any tips? How can we make sure that self-reflections happen?
Well, I think that number one, you could do it inside meetings. I know this is going to be really strange to a lot of people, to be in a meeting when no one's looking at their phone, but to actually say, everyone put the phone down, put your phones on silent, and you have paper and pen, and you say, all right, let's brainstorm on our reflections from a project we just completed. We just completed this project. How do you think it went? And I think that's another thing, is oftentimes we finish projects and we forget to wrap it up, and what did we learn from that project? So I think just being in a room and saying, look, for the first 15 minutes of our meeting today, no phones. We're just going to be reflective, and I'm going to ask you some questions. I also think just giving people more time on their own to do it. I'm going to talk about this, but I teach a class called Managing Priorities, and one of the best ways to be productive is to set time for yourself, 15 minutes even, of just sitting with a sheet of paper and seeing what comes up. Even if nothing comes up, it gives your brain a little rest from all of the noise that's coming in all the time from us. So I think that's one way as managers, is to almost force the reflection. But I also think that in offsites, in team meetings, is to just put a question up on the screen and say, we're going to spend 2 minutes more. I want you to reflect on this question, phones down. And I think that just making that a part of your everyday almost doesn't have to be for too long. It can be for 2 minutes, really. I think it can be really helpful.
Oh, very good ideas. And I think also, let's say, for people who, want to, like perform better, right? And, we can self-reflect and, like those failure challenges, opportunities, right? So those really, we need to put our effort, our mind into it to think about it. And so that's going to bear fruit. And, when we communicate with our managers, right? So this is very obvious, and high quality discretionary effort. And I would say every leader will appreciate, right? Their team members do this kind of thing. So, performance wise, right? Like we also stand out. Yes, this is a great tool, right, for both the managers and the employees.
Yeah. I think another thing that managers can do is encourage their team members and colleagues. You can encourage your own colleagues, your peers, to come with you to trainings, but also managers to just be like, I think that you could really work on communication skills. And there's a workshop this weekend. So I think that just encouraging people to attend events, even if it takes time out of their workday, I think that's even important. It shows you that you care about their education. So this is a tool that managers can use, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because in the group coaching that I'm going to do, we're going to talk about it at the end. But I talk about this in my active leadership class, and essentially, most of the times, managers will say to their team members, "I want you to do this," and then expect it to be done, and then that's it. So you go from, this is compliance. For example, June, I need you to give me all of our clients from 2010 in a spreadsheet. And then they walk away. They didn't even wait for a yes or a nod of the head. They just expect that June is going to do that, right? But with Kubo, what you can do is take an extra 30 seconds or even a minute, and you could go longer, but the example could be, June, I need all of our clients from 2010 because we're working on a project that's going to investigate how we treated those clients that year. We want to do a survey. And that now June understands why he's doing what he's doing. Now, then he could get to the belief, so that now June can actually do this task and actually believe in it and understand why he's doing it. Mm. And June could even have information and say, actually, we did a survey back 2 years ago. A lot of times the people on the ground, the team members, have more information than the manager has up here. So including them in the decision-making process is really helpful. And this is again, creating this learning mindset of being just like, I think we should do this project. We're going to do this project, and here's my ideas. What do you think? So it's not just like, we're going to do this project, you do this, this, and this. It's like, we're going to do this project. This is what I think we should do. What do you think we should do? And so this is the power of Kubo, is not just demanding work to be done, but including people in the process, because they might have more information, and it's more of an efficient way of working, especially these days when I feel like the younger generations have a lot more information than some of us, the older generation, has sometimes. So we talk about this tool a little bit deeper in the active leadership class, but I just wanted to mention this to you because I feel like it is a great way to think about it as you're giving assignments, projects to your team members.
And I think this is, like the everyday leadership that we, talked about a while ago. So this is, like in addition, right, that's very useful for the managers. It's useful for everybody, right? So we all need to collaborate with somebody, right? Let's say, somebody on our team or, in a different function. If we tell people, right, the reason behind our ask, right? So it's easier to get their buy-in, and they actually can do a much better job, right, helping us.
Absolutely. I don't feel like anyone has all the answers. And I feel like that's a kind of very old school mentality of, once you get to a level in the organization, you're king, you know everything, and you're going to demand all these things on everyone. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I feel like we have a very nimble workforce now. Especially, I just feel like the younger generations are so much smarter now than they've ever been, and they have their ear to the ground. They know what's happening. So I think we have to be very inclusive of all the voices in our organization. So like I just said, we were just talking about this, but a lot of people think of their careers like this, like, we're going to move up the ladder, go up the organization, But I feel like these days it's more like this, that you have this goal in mind, but it's not a straight line. Sometimes you go around, you're going down. I would even argue that I think it might be more like this, that there's not just one goal in mind, but that you reach a goal and then what's next, and you go to the next goal. So I feel like this is a much easier way to think about your career, is to say, this is what I want, I'm going to go after it, but it might not be a straight line. I might have to do 2 years at McKinsey, and it's not what I want to do, but it's going to build my confidence. It's going to build my network. I'm going to build all these skills. And then the next step is this. And so eventually you're going to get to that goal. But it just looks a little different these days. And I feel like we have to be kinder to ourselves, that it's not, we might start a job that we think is our dream job and end up discovering that, well, that's not exactly what I want to do, but I'm going to stay here for a little while. I'm going to gain the skills, I'm going to gain some confidence, and then I can make my next move. So I just wanted to point that out to you as we think about career planning, is that it's not always a straight line. And there's going to be diverging patterns.
Yeah, basically, again, right, leverage our growth mindset, right? What we can learn and grow from the current situation, right?
Absolutely. And I also feel like people get frustrated with the jobs that they're in, and that's fine. But then they go into their jobs and they're just like, I hate my job. I don't like what I'm doing. But you can always find something in that job to keep growing. You can have an idea what you want to do, but until you get there, use the resources of the company you work with. Think about how you can actually leverage the people. We're going to talk about mentors in a second. The people around you, tapping into the minds of the very successful people in the organization. So I feel like this is a much better way of looking at your career. So, okay, now we're gonna get to the more of the planning at the end, but I wanted to give you some perspectives on adult learning. So there's tons and tons of theories, but we're gonna focus on 3. So andragogy is the original sort of adult learning model. So pedagogy means the how children learn, and andragogy means how adults learn. And it was, and this is Malcolm Knowles, who formulated this theory in the 70s, but he really worked on it in the 80s. So this is a fairly new model. And essentially what he wanted to do is figure out how adults learn differently than children, because it is different. And again, he comes from a time when once you're an adult, you've learned everything you need to do. You go to your job, you move up the ladder, and people move behind you. So it's a very old school way of thinking, but that doesn't really happen anymore. So here's what he says in his models. So adults have a need to know why they should learn something. And I think I used this example with you the other day, June, is a lot of adults had to learn how to use Zoom when COVID hit, when we were all sequestered at home. We had to figure out, a lot of people didn't know how to use Zoom, so we had to learn how to work in the virtual environment. So they knew why they had to learn that, because they couldn't go into the office, right? Mm-hmm. Adults have a deep need to be self-directing. And this is something you're very good at, right, June, when you're learning, is being self-directed?
Yeah, of course. I think that, so we have this basic needs, right? So we want to have autonomy, right? We want to feel that we're competent, and we want to feel that, we're, we belong, right? Somewhere. So I think, what you shown so far really, correlates to the basic human needs, right? Very well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, self-directing for sure, right? That's help us to be, competent.
Yeah, I think that when we want to learn something, we go after it, and you kind of figure out how to do it. Yep. Right. So that's the other thing about adults versus children, is we have a lot of experience. So we can actually rely on our experience to sort of educate how to maneuver this next thing that we need to learn, when children don't really have that. So adults become ready to learn when they experience in their life situations a need to know or be able to do in order to perform more effectively and satisfyingly. That's probably a better Zoom example than the first one, but it's kind of similar, is they want to know why they should learn something. And then adults enter into a learning experience with task-centered or problem-centered or life-centered orientation to learning. Again, it's very similar to the Zoom idea, is that I had to figure this out. And so this is the kind of and one more, is that adults are motivated to learn by both extrinsic and intrinsic motivators, which means not only are there external factors that are affecting why they should learn something, but also internal. They have a desire to dance. They want to learn how to samba or to salsa, or they want to learn a foreign language. Something inside of them really wants to learn something. So that's that's the original adult learning theory. Now, here's my favorite one, which is the transformational learning theory. And this is Jack Mezirow. Now, Dr. Mezirow, because he's actually a teacher's college professor, and he passed away, I think, about 10 years ago. But he brought this transformational learning theory, which essentially says that we encounter a disorienting dilemma, which could be a death of a loved one, a marriage, a new job, and it forces us to rethink our perspectives and our values. And what we do is we go on this learning journey where we're actually forced to change. We don't actually not forced to change, because some people actually are reflective about their life and they go down this path of transformation. And then guess what happens? So a lot of times what happens is they go back on autopilot. Remember, we talked about humans are really good about going back on autopilot. A lot of times this is what happens. But if you want to go for a really great ride, this is a really great 10-step process. I'm happy to talk about it with you another time, but I just wanted to mention this. I felt like I went on a transformational learning journey a couple of years ago. I got really depressed and I did not know why, and I had to figure it out. And I wasn't really happy where my life was. And what happened was I came out on with a completely new perspective on my life. And I think that I owe it a lot to just being reflective and thinking about how my perspective on the world was different because of this disorienting dilemma that I was up against. So an aha moment. And finally, this is going to be a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but Dr. Kolb talks about experiential learning, that successfulness of learning is creating meaning from experience. So it's more like hands-on. You're doing it as you go along. So there's 4 stages of it: concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, active experimentation. I'm going to show you what these mean on the next slide. But you can also be really good at one of these, and you're going to see that in the next couple of slides. So the cycle is the concrete experience. You must do it yourself in order for learning to occur. So in order for me to learn how to use this phone, I'm actually going to have to get on it and figure it and kind of work through it and test it out on my own. And then you take a step back and you're kind of thinking about the phone as you're not using it, some of the cons and some of the pros of using the phone, and you're reflecting and reviewing what you just did. And then the abstract conceptualization is you're fitting in what you just learned into everything you already know. So you're thinking about how this fits in with the computer that you're on, or how it fits in with your communication with your friends. And then finally, active experimentation is when you're sort of putting all these new ideas and perspectives into practice. And then finally, and again, we can do coaching and talk about your own learning style, how you prefer to actually learn, because a lot of times when these intersections, you might learn by feeling and watching. You might be a person that learns by doing and thinking. We all have a little bit of these, but we're really strong in 1 or 2 areas. So it's just thinking about how you learn, how you like to learn, and the process of learning. So these are all things that we can talk deeper on in another time. But June, what do you think about Dr. Kolb, and these learning styles?
I definitely find it very useful, right? So, it really shows that different people had different, preferred way of learning. So that means, no matter we're managing a team or we're part of a team, right? So, we shouldn't expect that, if other people can learn this way, then we should be able to as well. Right? So I think, it was quite eye-opening, when the first time, I had exposure to this, and I found it's very true, right? So if we actually leverage the learning style that, most suitable to us, we learn a lot more and a lot deeper with ease, right? So this is very critical. So how do we, get tested, right? Which is, our style, and then how do we proceed, right?
Well, I have a test that is pretty easy. It takes about 15 minutes. So that's always something I can do in coaching, or maybe down the line, we can offer a class around this. And then once you understand where you're very strong, that's great. You're like, this is how I fit in, but that's not really the important thing. The important is seeing where you're not great and being mindful that you need other people around you that are good at that kind of learning. Or when you're on a team, is to understand how other people are learning, so that you can give them the right amount of information in the right way.
Oh, this is so important, right? So how do we interact with others? Yeah, this is a fantastic point. Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of personality quizzes that you could take. I mean, they're all helpful because they give you a lot of information, like the DISC assessment. But I like this one because it's a very academic. Some people might not like this, but this one is very academic, and it can get a little confusing, but it's actually very interesting, at least to me anyway.
And this, I feel, will be more and more important in the future, right? Since, we're moving away from, the era of labor to era of information, and, to AI, right? VR, AR, those kinds. So learning takes, bigger and bigger portion, right, in our career. I feel so. This, understanding and how to use the learning style, to me, become much more important than before.
I 100% agree. I feel there's so many adults these days that are so anti-AI or anti-VR. And I'm just like, it's not going away. So this is something you should probably learn how to use and develop some skills. And because it's not a fad. It's like when the internet came around, it was like, oh, that's just a fad. Or when the novel came around, the novel used to be something where like, no, that's a fad that's going to go away. So I feel like we need to keep up as adults, keep up with the times. We're, as adults, we're living longer and longer. And I think that people in their 50s and their 60s, and they're even in the 70s, I feel like they can continue growing and learning and contributing to the society. So just here's an example of kind of how to use this. So you're a team leader, you want your team to be able to coach others effectively. So we're initiating a coaching program for my team, right? And so the 4 stages: asking your team to jump in and try to coach them, that's the concrete experience. Asking your team to discuss amongst themselves, that's reflective. After they've experienced it, they're reflecting on it, right? And then they're providing each member with a book, the abstract conceptualization. So that's the academic kind of getting in the weeds. And then finally, hiring an expert coach, like really experimenting with the idea. And then the 4 learning styles, which again, we can test you if you wanted to learn what your learning style is. But a person that's really strong and diverging, they probably would love to understand other people's take on coaching. People that are assimilating, they want to read a book. Converging also might want to read a book, but also plan to put the theory into practice. And then the accommodating, they just jump in. I'm more of I think I am accommodating. I really like getting my hands dirty, if you will. So I was wondering if we have time to do a quick reflection exercise. Do you think?
I think we can. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just would like our participants on the call to take 2 minutes. I'm going to set a timer, I want you, if you can, turn off your television. Don't turn off this presentation, but turn off your phone, put it on silent, put your phone down. And I want you to reflect on this question, because we are talking about reflection. And I really think it's important. So I'm going to put a timer on for 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes, and I just want you to sit and think about this question here. When was the last time you learned something? How did you learn what you did? What was the process like? How did it feel? So I want you to try to get away from all your distractions, and I'm going to put on a timer for 2 minutes, and I just want you to reflect. Let's see how it goes. All right, I'll see you in 2 minutes. All right, that's 2 minutes. So how did people, if you want to write in the chat how this went for you? How did it go for you, June?
This is actually, reflection is very useful, right? So, my last time learn something will be today. So I was reading the book Performance Beyond OKR. So, I never thought about this before, but this reflection really showed me, like my thinking style and, how I approach things. So for example, I just realized that, so when I read this book, I was comparing, contrasting, right, what this author saying versus my own practice. And I also realized that I can be a very slow reader. So sometimes it take me half an hour to read one page, because I will be imagining a scenario, how I'm going to use this, what I learned on this page. So for hypothetical, right, a scenario. Yeah, so this reflection is very useful. Now I definitely feel that I'm a convergent style, right? So to learn effectively, at least I would need to read a book, because I'm a big picture person. So I need to understand, the bigger picture, the frame of, what I need to work on. And then this, since I cannot do something immediately, but then I have a hypothetical problem to solve, so I can internalize the learning. Very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I just wanted to show how easy it is to incorporate this into a meeting or to anything. So it's I think it's a very useful tool. So we have 2 more little topics. I just wanted, first of all, just think about mentorships. And what we've done at Columbia, and you're welcome to do the same. I think Google does something very similar as well, is they don't have formal mentorships, because I feel like formal mentorships don't work a lot of the times because I feel like mentorships need to happen organically. So what we did is we selected leaders across the university. So for example, for one quarter, 3-month period, we selected about 10 leaders, and each of those leaders gave 45 minutes, 6 45-minute slots of their time on their calendars, blocked out of their calendars, and they had 3 topics that they were experts in. For example, presentation skills or fundraising or negotiation skills. They would list the topics, and then anyone in the community could sign up for one of those 45-minute slots. So within that 45 minutes, that was a mentorship opportunity, that they were getting insights from a leader on a particular topic. And then quite possibly they might have developed some chemistry, a connection, and then the mentorship would happen organically. But it didn't matter if they went on. It was that one moment in time that they were able to connect with a leader and get their time and ask them questions about this particular topic. For me, that's reimagining what mentorships actually are. I think a lot of times people think that to be a mentor, you have to pick someone and you have to do all this work. And I think that if you do connect with someone, you're going to want to do that naturally. But forcing yourself to do these things doesn't really work. So I just wanted you to think about reimagining your mentorships. I also think if you want to talk to someone, if you just want to pick someone's brain, if you don't have a program like we have at Columbia or at Google, is to email someone that you're really interested in meeting, know about them, not just because they're successful in your organization, but know why they're successful. Email them and say, I would love to get 20 minutes coffee with you. Not an hour, not 30 minutes, 20 minutes. 20 minutes is a really key here, is to say, I'd love to get 20 minutes coffee with you and talk about X. You just finished this great report on the economics of China, and I want to pick your brain a little bit. Don't use that word, pick your brain. I hate when people say that, but I wanted to talk to you about your paper. And when you do that, people are generally going to say yes to you, and that's how you build your network. That's how you start. That could even develop into a mentorship. So just think about that as you're building that network, especially as you're thinking about your career progression, because they might have insights about where you could go next in your career, or if you're really good at something, what you could do further down the line.
Yeah, this is actually a very good point, right? So I think now I realize that most people, they want to be helpful, right? The executive for sure, right, want to be helpful, and I think what is less tolerated is if they feel they wasted their time, right? So that means if they're open to like share their insights, right, their expertise, then what can we do to make sure that their effort is not wasted, right? So that to me that means following up, right, with what's how their advice information helped us, right? Or sometimes reverse mentoring, right? So this person that we want to get mentor on has their expertise, but we know something they don't as well. So if we can exchange information, right, so that will be right, beneficial to them too.
I love that idea of reverse mentoring so much. And I wish more senior leaders would take advantage of that. Another thing that you could do is that if you're a junior member getting and asking someone for mentorship, is after the end of that meeting is to say, is there anything that you need that I could help you with? And who knows, they might actually be like, well, I need help on a project. So the question is, what if you didn't receive a response email from them? So I would give it a week. And then if you don't, follow up one more time. And if they don't, maybe try their assistant. But I wouldn't try to force it, because sometimes, and it depends what kind of organization you work for and what kind of culture exists within an organization. I always go for the gatekeepers, though, is if you can make friends with a person's assistant, their executive assistant, and they can generally help. So I would give it a week, follow up if you don't hear back, and then I don't know if you really want to meet the person, maybe be persistent, and that might benefit you. You never know. What do you think, June?
Yeah, I think this 1 week, I definitely agree with that. And so I would say sometimes people don't respond because they're just too busy and they forgot. But sometimes, they're not in a position to, like to share their expertise at the moment. So I think, when we, let's say, do business development or, raise sales, try to attract new customers, the success rate, if it's, 20%, so that means if we have 5 invites and 1 actually responded, that's already very good. So within a, company, and if we have, like, we actually did our research before reaching out, right, and be sincere, authentic, I think the rate will be much higher than 20%, but I wouldn't expect 100% though. Yeah, so there definitely will be people who cannot.
Yeah, I think sometimes it gets lost. I rarely someone isn't going to respond. Usually, sometimes if they don't want to respond, they'll forward it to someone else to reach out to you. So I wouldn't be afraid of not receiving a response. I don't know if you have already sent an email and you haven't heard back, but I wouldn't be afraid of that. And finally, I just want to talk about accountability. So this is really thinking about what you want to achieve in your career and how you can go about doing it. So I love this idea of a learning contract, and managers, you can do this with your team members, is thinking about what's the learning goal. Remember, there's a big learning goal at the top, and then there's going to be little steps to get there. I'm going to show you an example in a second, just like the first 2 objectives of a learning goal. But you want to think about, as you're helping someone build either their professional journey or their career development, what are the resources and strategies? And then what's the evidence of accomplishment? You want to make sure that you're measuring the success, right? And then what's that evaluation criteria, and what's the validation, what's the timeline? So I was helping someone at Teachers College, actually coaching someone about developing learning and development, their experience as a learning and development professional. So they had 5. So I only listed 2 here. But their big goal is practice strategies for growing expertise as a learning and development professional, right? So one learning objective is research adult learning theories and history, as well as educators with media platforms, etc. These are the strategies. This is the evidence of accomplishment. So this is very, very straightforward. So if you are helping someone, and you can also do this with colleagues, you can do this with your friends, is to hold each other accountable. Because oftentimes what happens is we have this goal in our mind, and what happens is we go back on our autopilot and we forget all about it. TV is much more interesting. My phone is much more interesting. I don't want to put in the effort. I don't have the growth mindset for this particular challenge, and it falls on the wayside. But if you have someone, and you can do it together, you both can have your own learning contracts, and you come together and you figure out how you're going to learn something, like, for example, AI or VR. So that's what do you think about the learning contract, June?
Oh, I love this. So, and we talk about, right, having somebody to hold yourself accountable. I think that's a key, right? So, like you said, autopilot is so prevalent, right, in our life, especially now. Everybody has more than a plate full of things that they have to do. Yeah, I love this. And this, actually, it's almost like the SMART goals, right? So keep ourselves accountable, and also, we can actually measure our own success, which, give us, like, almost like the confidence or motivation to keep learning. Right? I love this.
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty easy to develop your own learning contract. So just put it into a spreadsheet, in a Google Doc, and you could share it with friends or your manager. And so, do we have any questions? Because we're pretty done here with all of our objectives for the day. Does anybody have a question? You can put it in the chat.
Well, while waiting for the questions, then I think we can go ahead to move on to the next stage. Right? We can always, I will monitor the chat, and whenever people ask a question, then we will address it.
Great. So we just wanted to highlight, I'm delivering this group coaching, and there's a special, so you can copy the QR code there. But this is and there's a deal also. I think it's I'm not going to say the price because I don't know it right now, but there's if you do all four, then it's a special rate. And essentially it's 4 classes that you're going to get. And for me, active leadership is one of my favorite tools that I've developed for managers, for team leaders, is in helping them. It's the simplest tools. Applying them can be difficult. Again, it's you have to actually make the effort. But they're all 2-hour classes. Usually the active leadership classes are 3 hours, but I'm going to condense it so you don't have to sit 3 hours in the class. So it's really teaching you how to develop a language to talk to people about the professional and career development, how to give and receive feedback, how to coach. And then second is the managing priorities class, which usually it's only an hour, but I'm extending it a little bit to do some exercises to teach you how to manage your time effectively and increase your productivity, reduce your stress. It's a very good class. Again, I give a lot of tips in this class. You don't have to do it all. You could do 3 and really save yourself a lot of time. And then finally, we go deeper on giving and receiving feedback that you get on the surface in the active leadership class. But it's such an art form, how to give and receive feedback, that it takes a deeper dive. And this is one of my favorite classes. And recently I had a colleague that took this class, and she recounted how she had delivered feedback to someone, and it was just right on, and it really helped, I think, her career very, very, very well. So if you're interested, I would love to have you, and I think we have some questions coming in.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I feel that all this 4 courses really speak about this, interpersonal, right, softer side of the skills, which, as we move, progress in our career, will become much more important than the technical skills that we have used used to progress. Right. This is fantastic, and this is all like kind of the key soft skills we have to develop. I am very interested.
I'm joining.
All right, now we have some questions from the audience. You may ask, can you talk more about building trust within teams?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that it's gonna take time. Building trust takes a lot of time, but that triangle that I mentioned is very powerful. And to just watch how you communicate with your team. And I think self-assessment, being self-aware, is one of the leadership principles that we talk about in active leadership. And a lot of managers aren't very self-aware. So, this is a very good reflection exercise. Is after you have a conversation with one of your team members, is reflect back and be like, how did you think it went? Was I logical? Was I empathetic? Was I being authentic? Because I'm telling you, those 3 things, that's the easiest thing. But the 4th thing is time. It takes time to build trust. I actually think that when someone starts a new position, you have a lot of trust because they're in it. They love being there. They're in the honeymoon stage, right, of starting a job, and they're just happy to be there. So I think you have at the beginning, you have a lot of trust, but sometimes you lose trust because it was a breakdown in one of those things: empathy, authenticity, or logic. So I think another thing is use that Kubo model. Really bring in your team when you're making decisions. That's another great way to build trust.
Right. So, when you talk about the self-awareness, I just want to add one quick thing. So I see, some managers, right? No manager, they want to, they wake up one day and they say, today I'm going to be an alpha manager.
No.
Right? They're not going to do that. But, how they behave, they're not aware. for example, we say that do unto others what we want, done on us, right? So I think that somebody may take that literally, right? For example, don't have a good example. So let's say, for example, my daughter, 5 years old, right? So she will think that, playing slime is the best thing in the world. Then she will give me slime and let me play, right? But is there something that I truly, enjoy? Not so much, right? So, being a manager, we need to be aware what other people, what they like the most, right? Their thinking style, right? Their personality can be very different than the managers. So
Yeah.
keep that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
And
right.
actually, that's actually a great response to the next question about gifts to show appreciation to the mentor. Is you want to get to know your mentor. So what would the mentor like? I had someone, a mentor, I know that he likes basketball. I forgot the name of the basketball team. But I bought him that hat. I bought him the hat. He wears it every time I see him. He wearing this hat because he really likes that team and he loves basketball. So you need to figure out, and don't go overboard with your gifts. They need to be like under $50. I would do under $30 because I think that then you're buying favors. But also you could even be like, can I treat you to a coffee? Can I treat you to a drink? And then you extend the time you have with your mentor. But I really think that you have to figure out what makes your mentor tick, which is what June was just talking about with that last question. And once you can figure that out, then you can figure out a really good gift. And it doesn't have to be big because the mentor probably gets everything that they want already. They're probably little meaningful things. They go a long way.
Sometimes I find that, like some of my mentors, they love reading books. So, sometimes we exchange like the books we like to read, or, let's say the summaries that we have about the book. So that was, to some people, that was a great gift, right? So it really depends on, like try to figure out what they like and going that route.
Another way that's free is actually you find an article that you think they would be interested in, email them the article, and they'd be like, I thought about you. So you're keeping on top of their mind. It's just benefiting them and their learning, right? So I think that's another thing that you can do to help build your relationship.
Yeah, fantastic. Our next question.
Oops.
Which book you would recommend, or which book you have recently read? Oh, that's a bunch of books for me.
You read so many books. I think this is a good question for you. There is one book that always comes to mind, and I read it a while back, and I thought it was so good. It was called Mastery. And let me look at the author's name is Robert Greene. I'll put it in chat. But that was a really, really amazing book, and I would kind of recommend it to everyone. Okay, you go.
To me, I would say the few basic books, nonviolent communication. So I found that's very helpful, to everywhere, right? At work, at home. So basically, communicate in a nonviolent way, so that and diffuse anger, so that we can really have transparent understanding of one another.
Is that Marshall Rosenberg?
Oh yeah. And the next one, I actually will go with CEO Excellence. So for anyone who wants to do a great job at work, no matter you are a CEO or you aspire to be a CEO, this book is just fantastic. Right? So give us a framework of how we should think about management, right? Management is not just about manage projects or our team, right? So it goes so much beyond that, and there's also a lot of good, interesting practical tips from different CEOs, right? Those very high caliber people, how they work. There's a lot of good books.
There's so many good books. I'm going to give you one more that's kind of outside the box, but it's called The Courage to Be Disliked.
Oh,
and it's a philosophy psychology book. Adlerian psychology, which Adler was a peer of Freud and Jung, but he didn't get as much attention as the other two. And then it was rediscovered in Japan, so it's huge in Japan. So I'm going to write the authors here.
Hey, great.
And I think it's a really great book, and it's Socratic method. So it's a teacher and a student talking back and forth. And I think it's a very interesting book about how to overcome past challenges.
Great. All right. We have a reading list. So the next question is this course designed for entry level?
Which
I guess all four of them, maybe in general.
I actually think anyone could jump in and learn something from these classes. I think the active leadership, you have to be a manager. So if you are not a manager, I wouldn't take that class. Or then the same with so if you're not a manager, no, but I think that I have had very senior managers take the class and have found it very useful. So you don't have to be new and you don't have to be senior. You can actually, it's just really helpful to look at the tools and use them.
And Snow asked a question on the slide showing a safe psychological environment. Is there a preferred order of actions listed on that slide? Which one do you recommend to start with or focus on first?
Is there a preferred order of actions on that slide? Oh, about the, here, let's go back to that. Are you talking about, this one, developing lifelong learning?
Yeah.
I think that they can happen. Yeah, I think that they sort of happen all at the same time, kind of. I think you can just start, and they kind of all work together. If you look at the list, I think that you just pick one, and you're gonna know when that opportunity is going to arise. For example, if you're in a meeting and you're in a rush, and instead of being in a rush, take 5 minutes to go. I would love to answer any of your questions that you might have. So you're promoting curiosity and questioning. And the psychologically safe environments was about trust, building that trust. Leading by example is just sharing with your team this seminar, going tomorrow and saying, this is what I learned, and I want to start implementing some of these ideas. So I think that there's no steps. All of these are valuable. I think that you just pick one and start.
Yeah. Take a screenshot. All right. Next one. How can Chinese use the cultural assets for innovation in public health at higher education?
I don't know if I understand the question.
I don't really either. Jing, do you want to? Can I invite? I don't know how to invite you on the stage. Admin, can you help? Could you unmute Qing? All right. While we're waiting for the admin to act, let's go to the next question. So Qing, hold on for a second.
And we have written the books in the chat. If you don't see them, we could. I think we've written them a couple of times in the chat. Just look for ME or J or JH.
Mm-hmm. Qing, I think you can talk. So go ahead, please.
Hi. As I enjoyed this session, so my question means for Columbia University, it's such a wonderful campus with outstanding Chinese professors, scholars. Mm-hmm. So I wonder this question, how can Chinese use culture asset? Culture asset, a lots of rich meaning here for innovation in public health. So I want to stimulate the discussion. One suggestion I could say is intergenerational solidarity and transfer. So you see the movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. We have a Gong Gong grandpa there, but you suddenly found such movies for 3 generations in American mainstream movies. How we learned through transfer intergenerationally, building good relationship, and also transfer value, transfer how to caring about others. So this is some asset as an example. So I love to keep this discussion in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I love this discussion. I think that we can learn so much from different cultures. I just came back from South Korea, and I learned so much about their culture. And I think that that's also a good discussion to bring up to CUIMC, which is the medical campus at Columbia, because it's really big, and they have a lot, like the Melman School of Public Health is there. And I think that that's a really great idea for a future discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Appreciate.
Thank you, Qing. All right. So last question. B's question, could you talk a little bit more about emphasize the value of failure and resilience?
Yes. So resilience to me means is really good change management. So that's another class, Kathy, that we should add, is change management and resilience. But failure just means that when things don't go well, is not to rub someone's nose in it, but to give them grace and to say, how did you learn from this, and how will you change your behavior moving forward? So it's allowing someone to make mistakes and you're not suffering the consequences. I understand that there's a big mistake. If there's a client, something happens with a client, or someone loses a lot of money, and there probably needs to be some repercussions for those things. But really, internal mistakes is allowing those before it goes out. I think that's what we mean by emphasizing the value of failure, because when you make mistakes, you learn a lot. And in terms of resilience, is bouncing back from mistakes. And also, I think that resilience can also be just to look at what happened during COVID, is how resilient we were. And a lot of, some companies were not, they went out of business, but some companies were. So that for me is the resilience, is when something extreme happens, is bouncing back from it.
So I would say in general, people expect, right? The leaders expect that their people make mistakes because nobody's perfect, right? What's important is, what we can learn from the mistakes, so if we treat mistake as currency, right? So, we can use money to buy iPhone, but if you, throw a brand new phone to the ocean, you're wasting your money, right? When you make mistake, if you, cannot learn from it and next time make the same mistake, you're completely wasted, the mistakes, great opportunity to learn. And about the big mistakes, small mistakes, I would say, when you are at the beginning of your career, so most of the mistakes you can make is smaller, right? So, and it's expected that you can make some mistakes. It doesn't mean that you should just, freely make all kinds of mistakes, right? But it's the mindset that making mistakes is not the end of the world, right? So it's more about, what we can, learn, what can move on from here. So even if this is not the environment that you're in, but if you can be proactive, right, to think about, how you can recover, right, from the mistakes, and like communicate with your manager, I think it will be, the outcome, right, even with or without the right environment, the outcome would be better than withholding the mistakes or not learning from it.
Yeah, unless you're a doctor and you're a surgeon, I think that's why you're so well monitored. I think that they can also happen within financial institutions, and as long as there's checks in place where things aren't going out, and someone isn't suffering, then I think mistakes are fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mikhail. This is just fantastic, talking with you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. This has been I love giving talks like this, so it's been my pleasure. And can we share the slide deck and the replay with everyone?
So Mighty,
yes, we have a YouTube live stream that there will be automatic recording there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miguel and June, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. And before we get off, you talk about your group coaching. Can you mention your private coaching, what they could get from you? Because we have a special offer today. If you sign up to be Gold Silver member, you'll get one free session from you. Thank you.
Sure. Let me stop. Did I stop sharing? Yes. So I like to focus a lot on communication and presentation and how to be assertive, building confidence, being authentic in the workplace. Those are some of my, also just sometimes figuring out what you want to do in life is a really big one for me as well. And coming up with a strategic plan to get there. I also I love working with more senior people on developing strategies and diverging their thinking on some extreme challenges they have in the workplace. And I'm pretty well-rounded when it comes, but those are my top ones. Helping college students break into the workforce. And I'm also a spiritual coach as well, if anyone's interested in that. But yeah, I'm pretty, since Morgan Stanley really helped me shape how I became a coach, really. So, and there I was able to work with so many different people on strategies to develop their career. So that's how I would be happy to work with you on your career, your professional development, even some life strategies.
Okay, you also mentioned for those who are in New York area, could also schedule in-person coaching session with you as well, right?
That's a possibility, yes.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking about when this schedule coaching session with you in person, each time just require minimum 2-hour sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to switch to Chinese.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you both. 谢谢大家。我们今天的 special 就是，如果你加入任何的 membership，you purchase 任何 membership get the free sessions from Miguel。但是如果你已经是我们 member 的，你可以 feel free to schedule 在媒体上 feel free to schedule coaching sessions with him。然后那个 group session 的话，我们是 launch 两个 session， 一个就是全部是跟着 Miguel 的，全英文的。另外一个呢，就是我在后面有加1个小时的中文的讨论和总结的，所以你可以是 Miguel 的那个纯英文的 session 是799块钱，4个 session， 每次 session 是2个小时，然后你加200块钱的话，就是有等于说是 total 3个小时，有1个小时的中文在后面做讨论和应用。这样的话，你学到的东西，你知道怎么样中文消化，你怎么样知道在职场上做使用。然后的话也跟同学们一起讨论，一起学习，好吧？欢迎大家参加。如果说是你的时间有冲突，也会有 recording， 好吧？大家有什么问题，到时候我们也可以你 click 进去的话，这是2个不同的报名 session， 一个是纯英文的，一个是英文加上中文的。就像我们前面的黄埔军校这个时期的培训课程一样，最后的是中文的，我们叫画龙点睛的总结和应用，欢迎大家参加。另外的话，如果你还没有进买底群的，请加入买底群。如果你已经在里面，就不用加入了，好吧？我们有不同的 coach 的消息不同的 event， every Tuesday 的 session， 欢迎大家参加。那如果没有参加我们健身群的，欢迎加入我们的职场健身高效健身群。 这个锻炼是太重要了。我今天下午跟2个 executive 在聊的时候，就谈到他们公司从 director 级别以上一直到 C level 的，基本上是 require working out。如果每天能抽1个小时出来 to build up high energy， 所以欢迎大家，我们每天免费的健身谢谢大家。另外我们还有其他的Charles 刘 COO 的 group coaching， 也欢迎大家参加。前面有2个 session 呢，前面已经有2个 session 是非常受欢迎的，它就是用中文的，这个 session 是用中文怎么样手把手教你在 C-suite 上怎么样沟通，怎么样 advance， 怎么样 network， 手把手教，所以也欢迎大家参加。这些都是 group coaching session， 大家不单只是从 coach 那里学习，在此同时的话有 build a strong network with your classmates， 也欢迎参加。另外也欢迎参加 June 给出了非常 special 的 rate 给大家 private coaching， 所以也继续欢迎大家 sign up for June's special coaching session. Can you move this? Yeah, June 的 special sessions. 好吧，大家也看到了他自己在生物医药方面不断的提升，也拿了 MBA， 现在他也是在哥伦比亚学习这个 coaching， 所以他已经是帮助我们好些朋友们，特别是就是初入职场，然后在职场初中期，因为他自己也是比较 young professional， 然后怎么样 advance 他的 career， 然后他也比较小的孩子，怎么样 manage life work balance。我们好几位同学都说哇哦，就是学到了 life 和 work 怎么样去 balance， 包括怎么样 manage 家庭的关系呀，所以也欢迎大家。OK， 看看大家有没有什么问题。Are there any more slides? Thank you. OK， 好吧，谢谢大家。我们你到媒体上就可以看到所有的信息，欢迎参加 program。另外的话，我们在各个群里面也发了，如果你做这个 survey， 就可以拿到一个 free group coaching on small talk 的 session， 所以也欢迎大家填这个 survey， 在每个群里头都有发，好吧？谢谢大家 ，and good night。有什么问题的话，我待多几分钟。谢谢 ，be happy， be healthy。每个星期2。MIT 讲座，欢迎推荐和自荐 speakers， 帮助我们华人在职场上不断的提升和发展。另外 Miguel 也提到了他也可以帮大学生或者是大学刚毕业的学生怎么样去 effective communication 提高自信，怎么样去寻找工作，怎么样去 effective interview。 OK， 谢谢大家。And good night.
Record